Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 30th of November, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight, we'll unpack Senator John McCain's ongoing battle with the White House over the Benghazi bombing and find out what Senator Jon Kyl is doing on the immigration front. We'll also talk about the TUSD school closures and look at how redistricting affected this year's congressional and legislative races. Joining me this evening is Pima County Democratic Party Chairman Jeff Rogers, Republican National Committeeman Bruce Ashe, Tucson City Councilman Steve Kozachik, and political strategist Rod McLeod. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. Jeff, let's start with the news this week that Governor Jan Brewer rejected the idea of setting up a health exchange under the state of Arizona. These are the exchanges where health insurance policies will be sold online and consumers can go on and decide which kind of insurance they want to purchase. This means the federal government will be setting up the exchange here in Arizona. Did Governor Brewer make the right call?
Well, I don't think she did, and let me give you an analogy. In the Medicaid program, each state sets up its own program, and Arizona was one of the last states to do it, but Arizona was one of the states that did it the best. Our Medicaid program has been recognized as one of the most efficient ones in the entire United States, and it is less costly. It delivers services better at a lower rate, and that's not to say there aren't some problems with people who got cut out of the program by the legislature over the last 4 years and the governor. But I think some of these state solutions are going to be better solutions. And let's face up to it, the Affordable Care Act passed. It's constitutional. We may as well have our own version of these things here that is specific to Arizona. And I think there's a large community of people in the healthcare business and healthcare providers, hospitals, doctors, and others who are really pushing this along to see if we can maybe get the legislature to reconsider the governor's decision. She seems rather stubborn that she's not going to go along with it. I think it's really politics. I mean, Jan Brewer has shown that one of the things she enjoys most is wagging her finger at the federal government and President Obama, and I don't think that's very helpful right now. I think we really ought to investigate seriously the state exchange.
Bruce, your thoughts?
It's a states' rights issue. States decide what they want to do. Governor's made a good call. I think ultimately it'll help save a lot of money here in Arizona, and I don't know what the differences will be between a state program and a federal program in terms of coverage. And I think the governor was completely justified making the decision she did. It's a wise decision. Will save the taxpayers a lot of money down the road.
And Rod, one of the things I've heard Democrats say is that they're happier to let the federal government step in and do this because the legislature might not have come up with a particularly efficient exchange at the end of the day anyway. What do you think?
Well, I agree with what Jeff said. You know, access, the Medicaid program here in the state of Arizona is really, I mean, it's a good word, access, but the acronym stands for cost containment. Healthcare cost containment system. So it's all about limiting costs and saving the taxpayers money, and Arizona came up with its own way of doing things. And I think this is one of the strengths of the federal legislation. The Republicans like to call it a government takeover, but what the federal government did was created a market-based system and allowed each state to do it in its own way. Now, Bruce points out that the governor had the right to make the choice, and she sure did, but for somebody who likes to complain about the federal government having so much power over Arizona, she just surrendered power to the federal government. I suspect she just wants to have something to complain about.
Steve, we'll avoid a battle over whether contraception is covered in the exchanges, I suppose.
Well, perhaps. I'd default to local decision making. We're the ones who know the constituents. We're closer to the issues at the local level. Frankly, though, she wasn't even going to get the support of her own caucus. I would have liked to have seen her show some leadership and at least propose a statewide plan, the same way she did with the education tax a couple of years ago, and try and get some cross-aisle support for it and maybe get it through. But I'm concerned about the federal government being more removed from the process here locally, statewide, and so I'm concerned. I would have preferred to see a statewide system.
And Rod, some congratulations are in order. You worked on Kirsten Sinema's congressional campaign up in Maricopa County, and also a little bit on Ron Barber's campaign down here. You won both those congressional races in competitive districts. Some Republicans at least, are still complaining that the Independent Redistricting Commission gerrymandered these districts to ensure Democratic victory. Is that your perspective after having been through these races?
Well, if that was the intent, they failed because Mitt Romney won the majority vote in 6 of the 9 congressional districts. So down here in CD2, where Ron Barber won, defeated Martha McSally, Romney defeated Obama. Romney also defeated Obama, I believe, in CD1, where Ann Kirkpatrick beat Jonathan Payton. So, whenever you have the voters choosing in a particular area, in a district, choosing a member of one party for president, a member of a different party for Congress or Senate, I think that shows you're dealing with a competitive district. And it, as we know, took more than a few days to even call these races because they were so close. So I think it demonstrates that the commission did draw competitive districts.
Bruce, your thoughts on how the IRC drew up these districts at the end of the day?
I think it's a problem when one person effectively holds all of the voters in the state of Arizona hostage to what that person wants to do. You could have made the same argument in 2000 when the first AIRC group met at that time. I think the process has to be widened. I think there has to be broader representation. That way, one person isn't the point for the entire state. If it was up to me, I'd go back to the legislature and take your chances. Some years you're going to control the legislature, and some years you're not. But this is the system we have for now, and I just think it ought to be broadened and be a little more participatory than what it's been.
And Steve, the city's been doing some of its own redistricting lately?
Well, we did. We've spent the last 9 months going through a citywide redistricting of the city wards process, and quite frankly, I haven't heard one word from the Pima GOP throughout the whole process. It was very disconcerting. It shows how disengaged they are from local politics. It's interesting to me, though. We get all the consternation about what happens on a statewide level, and then we see a really volatile some really volatile county races here recently, and yet the Pima GOP had not one word to say for the last 9 months about what happens within the city of Tucson. It was discouraging to me.
Should there have been a little more involvement from the Republican side?
Chairman Cox?
Oh, we had some contacts, yeah, and they weren't returned. Frankly, I got a lot of criticism from you publicly for not supporting some of the Pima County Republican people in the last council races, 2 of whom couldn't get on the ballot, 2 of whom sued the city, and one of them's probably still trying to figure out her campaign finance issues. I'd like to see more engagement from the Pima GOP in local issues and just quit griping about it when the things don't turn your way.
Well, you got your once a show dig in at the Pima GOP.
I might get some more.
If the process is
Bruce.
still going on, let you and I talk, because obviously I think we have common interests.
And interesting that you would say that, because the process, we already voted on it. I mean, you guys were asleep at the wheel for the last 9 months.
I have other issues I take care of.
Yeah, we'll give Carolyn a call sometime.
I will.
All right.
Thanks.
Rod, you also did some work on Richard Carmona's campaign. Did not come out as well as the congressional races, but lessons from that?
Well, I think one thing we've learned is that a competitive race is good for Arizona. The race was decided by under 3 points. Senator-elect Flake didn't quite hit 50%. And in a state where the presidential race was decided by 9 points, a 3-point outcome in the Senate race is pretty close. And I have to say that we saw according to exit polling, the Latino part of the electorate in Arizona grew to 18%, the largest it's ever been, as compared to 12% when Kerry and Bush ran, and 16% when Obama and McCain ran. So I think you're seeing a state that is becoming more and more competitive statewide, and we've got competitive districts and maybe competitive wards here in the city of Tucson. So I think overall we're seeing the changing demographics in Arizona are creating more competition, which is positive.
Bruce, as far as the Latino vote share growing in Arizona, and that's obviously been a big topic of discussion both here and nationally. The Republican Party need to do a little more outreach towards Hispanics, you think?
It's probably more important to do the right things as it pertains to comprehensive immigration reform, and I think you'll see leadership from the Republican Party, not necessarily to create a voter bloc, but to do the right thing. We've had a lot of opportunities that have been squandered, and now's the time to move forward as soon as this new session begins, I think.
And Jeff, that does bring us to Senator Kyle and the new legislation he introduced on the national level on the ACHIEVE Act, which is a Republican alternative to the DREAM Act. Your thoughts on how that is
Well,
coming
it's
together?
kind of a day late and a dollar short on behalf of Kyle. This is something long overdue, and it's dead on arrival. You'll notice that one of the champions in their party for some kind of reform, Marco Rubio, didn't even sign on to this bill, and it's probably because it creates a sort of an apartheid type of system where these young people are not going to ever have the chance to gain citizenship. There's no path to citizenship within the bill. And you must remember, unlike perhaps their parents, these young people came over here through no fault of their own. I mean, they were brought here by parents and are innocent of having committed any kind of offense at all. And so these people deserve to be rewarded for their law-abidingness and for going to school or joining the military. And I think that Republicans are viewing this as a magic bullet that perhaps they can cozy up to the Latino community and maybe this will solve some of their problems. But I don't think so. I think they're still going to have the culture war issues and social issues that drive a wedge between them and the voters they're seeking to appeal to.
Bruce, what do you think of the ACHIEVE Act proposal here? Are we past the point where we're going to be expecting the DREAM Act kids to self-deport or face arrest and deportation in this country, or is some sort of movement on this ACHIEVE Act or DREAM Act going to move forward?
I hope not. I hope that there's a comprehensive solution to the problem. It certainly is something that I plan to create resolution at the RNC when we meet in January. And I'm working right now on a resolution that we hope to get a sponsor either in the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate to back.
And let me ask you about also Governor Brewer has said that she won't issue these driver's licenses to these DREAM Act kids, and she got sued over that this week. Do you think that was the right decision by Governor Brewer?
I think she made the decision that she felt strongly about. I think at the end of the day, we need to have legislation that passes the Congress, gets signed by the president, so that states like Arizona aren't forced into that kind of a decision. We need everybody under the law. We need everybody in the workforce. We need to encourage education, service in the military, and so on. We need citizens. It's not necessarily about who's going to vote in the 2014 or the 2016 election. This is about doing the right thing. I view what's happened in the immigration world over the past really 40, 50 years almost tantamount to what was slavery in the 19th and the 18th century here in this country. It is something that we have to cure, and we have to do it in a comprehensive way, Jim.
And Steve, you've been critical of the governor's decision on the driver's licenses on this show in the past.
Yeah, I was, and I continue to be. And we predicted a couple of weeks ago that it would just wind up in litigation, and so that's borne itself out. As far as the ACHIEVE Act is concerned, this would have been a whole lot more believable if it had happened about 12 months ago. Now you've got a couple of the lamest of the lame duck senators who aren't coming back next time, 1 month before they leave office, throwing something out there. It just strikes me as appearing either to be pandering or posturing, and I think the Latino community is smart enough to see through that. I hope we do have a serious discussion about it, though, in the next term with people in the legislature who are going to be there for a while and have a chance to really engage and come up with a solution to this thing.
And where do you see the legislature going on immigration here, Rod?
I mean, we have new leaders in the legislature. They're going to have to make their own decisions. But I would think that because of the public discussion and on the national level, you've got U.S. senators and House members saying we have to do something about it. You just heard what Bruce said. So hopefully there's going to be a real debate. And I would hope that the Arizona legislators on the state level would take a look at what Senator Flake has had to say and maybe move in that direction. Because I think what the Republicans have done, I don't mean rank-and-file Republicans, I mean the leadership, the legislators, is they've been kind of scared off by the most vocal, angry part of their party. And, you've seen Flake vote against the DREAM Act, which he had previously co-sponsored. You've seen McCain and Kyle be really articulate and passionate about the need for comprehensive immigration reform and then kind of walk away from that in election years. So, we have elections every 2 years. We have to try to separate governing from running the election. And as Bruce said, let's just make decisions that we think are the right thing. And I think it's obvious that it's the right thing to reform our broken immigration system.
And Jeff, was some of what happened in terms of the Latino vote moving towards Obama in such big numbers this time blowback for what had happened here in Arizona in the Arizona legislature?
Well, I think some of it was. One of the things that's going on here in Arizona is we're projecting that we should hit 19 to 20% of the vote in the next 2 years. When we start hitting the low 20s, you're going to see
20% Latino
20% Latino turnout of the total vote. You're going to see the state turn purple and then blue really fast, and it's just a matter of getting them motivated and getting them turned out. And one of the problems we have is that we have 2 non-competitive districts. We have 4 Republican districts that are non-competitive, easy R's, and we have 2 that are easy D's. And getting the turnout ramped up in those 2 congressional districts has always been very difficult for us. And one of them is Pastores, and one of them is Grijalva's. And so you'll see that they will be much lower in total turnout, yet they're both much higher in Latinos. And so getting that's the magic bullet. If we can increase turnout dramatically in those 2 congressional areas, we can begin to win statewide races for the Democrats.
And Jeff, actually, that's part of the problem systemically with what the IRC did. When you pack those districts, there's no competitiveness. Not enough people are showing up. There's not enough people involved in the process.
Well, you're right, but you have to comply with the Department of Justice and Voting Rights Act.
I get all that.
And so that, and I have to agree. If we could spread the Democrats around into other districts, and the same thing happens in the Deep South with the African American vote, is that we have to comply with the Voting Rights Act and the Department of Justice and the case law that forces us kind of to have to do that to make it an area where a majority district can elect their chosen minority if they wish to. And so it's a difficult problem, and it probably does hurt Democrats to some extent.
If Latinos had greater economic opportunity in this state, they'd probably be more dispersed throughout the entire state. As it is today, they form communities of interest, and that's where a lot of Latino folks...
We see that all across America. I mean, there's been a resegregation of America in the past 2 decades. That's something we haven't seen for 50 or 60, 70 years. And it's just people drifting into communities, as you call them, communities of interest. And it's the same thing all across America. And here it's Latinos in the north, and the East Coast, it's African American communities. And a lot of it's driven by poverty, as you say. If you're more economic,
or by wealth, if there's prosperity and if there's opportunity. And going back to the immigration, that's really what this is about. It's growing jobs, it's growing job opportunities, it's creating wealth and prosperity and opportunity for everybody across the economic divide to get better jobs and to have opportunities to move to a nicer house, to a good school district, and their kids have a better life than what they've enjoyed.
I think Bruce is 100% right there, and I think that's the main reason why Latinos drifted to Obama during this election. They saw him as somebody that would expand the opportunities for them. And
see how that works out in the next 4 years. Latinos and African Americans, I think, have been uniquely impacted negatively by the Obama economic policies, especially this fiscal cliff that we face.
And the fiscal cliff is a little bit misnamed here. It's more of a slope than a cliff.
And I want to talk about that, but let's first talk about John McCain and Susan Rice. McCain has been very critical of her based on some interviews she gave on the Sunday talk shows. He seemed to be softening a little bit over the last weekend, but then he had a meeting with her and he came out and then once again expressed he had huge doubts. Jeff, does McCain, you think, have the power to actually scuttle a potential nomination to Secretary of State if that's the route Obama goes?
I don't think that he does, and I think he became a little softer during the week because he realized that he was starting to look like an idiot in the media, and even the talk shows that he likes to be on every week and seems to be there all the time, we're starting to be very critical of him. You must remember, in the first classified closed-door briefing of a joint select committee of Senate and House, he didn't show up. And what was he doing instead? He was giving a press conference where he was criticizing Susan Rice, and unfairly and falsely criticizing him, I might add.
And Bruce, what's behind what McCain's up to here?
Well, Ambassador Rice is either ill-informed or she's a dupe. And either way, I don't think we want that sort of an individual serving as Secretary of State. There's far too many diplomatic and national security interests that we have around the world to have somebody who takes their talking points and goes on 5 different shows on all the networks and talks about something, again, either she had little knowledge of or she was told to do what she did. That's not what we're looking for in the Secretary of State.
The intelligence community didn't want to leak out that we knew what was going on there. I mean, they didn't want to alert the Al-Qaeda types of people that we knew who was behind this and what was going on. I mean, the intelligence community has their own reasons, and we don't rush out and just say, here's everything we know.
She sought, the administration and the ambassador sought those talk shows, and if they didn't want classified information to be discussed, then stay home and go to church on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. Ron,
well, it sounds like you just want to create more room for John McCain to dominate the talk shows. Seriously.
It's ridiculous.
You know, I'm just joking with you. Look, 4 Americans were killed in Libya, in our consulate in Benghazi. And the first order of business has to be to figure out what happened, who did it, and how can we go after them. And I don't think that the public should be expecting a minute-by-minute progress report. So I'm glad that the ambassador to the UN didn't get on television and tell everything she knew. And I think it's ridiculous to suggest that she ought to have done so.
2 weeks, Rob, about how the video was what caused riots. They failed on this miserably, and there's no way that you can cover that up.
The president called it terrorism the day after it happened.
Yeah, he said it was an act of terror.
And he went to the UN the next week and talked about the video for 20 minutes.
Well, the video was a real issue in Egypt, certainly.
Well, there's greater issues in Egypt right now where President Morsi has basically taken over and has now condemned Egypt to be under Sharia law and has essentially become Hosni Mubarak in about 4 months of serving in that country. That's a bigger problem.
Well, it's not exactly that way, though, because Morsi doesn't have control over the military in the way that Mubarak did. And so there's a real big, strong pushback, and there's a real battle going on in Egypt about whether they're going to have autocratic government or not. And
they seem to be headed in that direction.
Well,
and with the problems in Syria, this is not a good situation, and we need to be more involved diplomatically and economically.
Well, maybe we can get a new Secretary of State on board, and she can get to work on that.
Maybe it'll be Senator John Kerry.
Wouldn't that be handy? Isn't that what the Republicans are really up to here, Bruce? They want Kerry to become the Secretary of State. So that's the Scott Brown plan, so we can have a special election in just a few months, and Scott Brown can get back in the Senate and take a Republican Senate seat.
Bring back Coakley.
All right, we're running out of time. I want to get to TUSD. I don't want to neglect the school closure issue. Steve, the board's looking at closing more than a dozen schools around Tucson. I went to the meeting earlier this week. Students, parents, very concerned about what's going on here.
Well, there are 2 issues going on. One is the closure issue, and that's a budgetary issue. And first of all, God bless the school board members for what they're working through. I mean, these are unpaid public servants who are doing yeoman's work trying to get their arms around this. I am concerned about some of the decisions that they're making and whether or not they're even following their own guidelines. And I'll give you one quick example. Sewell Elementary is 100% capacity, 67% minority. Almost half of those are Latino. And of the 3 schools they're considering, is the highest achieving school. It seems to me that's the model school you want to keep, not shut down. So the school closures and budgets are one thing. The unitary plan and the deseg plan is a different issue, though. And I've read through that. It seems to me in several areas it's fundamentally flawed. Number one, they're pulling ELL, English Learning Language students out for 4-hour blocks of time. That strikes me as being segregation, not immersion and integration. The Native American students have the lowest graduation rate in the district, and yet they're not even named in the whole deseg plan. In fact, I brought here a list of the jobs. This is a huge bureaucracy that's being created. Individual to coordinate and review the district's outreach, individual to coordinate recruitment, individual to coordinate professional support, individual to coordinate professional development, coordinator of advanced learning experiences, African American student achievement director, and on and on and on. There are pages of this thing. And where in this whole plan is the money for the teaching mission in this whole mess? And so that's an issue that we're kind of losing the mission of the district in the bureaucracy that's being created. And finally, the whole MAS question, and just intuitively, we are a multi-ethnic, multicultural community. It strikes me that there ought to be room in the curriculum of our public education for an element such as that. And I would hope that through this process, we find a way to retool that program, get it back into the curriculum, and frankly tell Horn and Huppenthal to shove it, because this is a community-wide interest, the whole community of interest issue, and it reflects what the city of Tucson is.
And it's a Mexican-American Studies program that was dismantled because of a new state law that said you couldn't have a program. Well, there were 4 criteria, and they said that the MAS did not fulfill any of those requirements. Bruce, your thoughts on both the MAS program returning and then also the school closures?
It certainly shouldn't return in the form and fashion that it currently was being taught. There certainly is room for diversity teaching and outreach into the Latino community and into the general community to learn more about our Hispanic and Latino culture here in Southern Arizona. I'm just not sure that anybody, whether it's the Arizona State Legislature, a lot of folks who lived in the district, myself being one of them, was very happy the kind of really racial teaching that was going on and the kind of hate speak that oftentimes went on in these classes that were there was no question that this was going on. These were observed by multiple people.
None of whom made the decision to shut the program down, though, by the way, Hoopenthaler Horn.
And Jeff, your thoughts on the whole MAS program?
Well, the federal court is going to order, the part of the order that looks like it's getting created now says that they must teach socially and culturally relevant curriculum in classes that show the perspectives of African and Latino communities, and that these must be core courses for which you can get credit, not just electives. And so that sounds to me an awful lot like the previous Mexican-American Studies program. So it sounds like the federal court is going to end up ordering them to go back to something quite similar, and it was a very successful program. The students who were in that program were more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to graduate from college, more likely to attend college. There was a recent study released just within the last 10 days from the University of Arizona College of Education that also backed up those ideas. So I think we're going to see some changes here and go back to that. But I'm on closing of school issues. I'm a little worried about what the rush here is. I mean, we've got several new school board members in who are going to change the makeup of this school board, and yet they're trying to rush this through before they get there.
Okay, and we're just going to have to leave it there. That is all the time we have for tonight, but thank you guys for being here. Learn more about what's happening in politics by visiting azpm.org, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment while you're on our website. Find out the latest from AZPM. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for a look at what Arizona educators need to do to create the workforce of tomorrow. On Monday, Arizona Illustrated takes a special look at the heroes in law enforcement. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.